You've heard me speak about nature versus nurture. Your nature needs to be your nature. If you're pretty risk adverse, look at risk adverse assets, right? It'll take a little bit longer. But what feels better is progress. That's why I tell you, on average, you're going to zoom out 3 years. You got to figure out where you want to be, because the shade you sit in was the seed somebody planted many years ago. So if you want to sit in the shade in a couple years, you better start planting them damn seeds now. And the best part that happens is when you see things for what they are.
Welcome to the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast, the ultimate destination for accredited investors and entrepreneurs seeking alternative wealth-building strategies. Discover how to fast-track your journey to wealth and time freedom by thinking outside the box. If you're ready to join the ranks of the Contrarian Capitalists and learn the most effective ways to reach your financial goals faster, you're in the right place. Let's get started with today's episode of the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast.
Thank you once again for listening to another episode of the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast. I am your host and your favorite silverback, Sylvania Harrod, and on today's episode, I'm going to give you guys a little gem. There's this magical place that happens that is called peace. Because if we think about it in general, the ultimate thing we actually desire in life typically is peace. We wrap it up in things like, oh, we need X amount of money, relationships, job, status, car, house, all the external things. But the reality is, if you were able to go ahead and experience peace, everything else becomes smoother. I didn't comprehend this at first when people first told me about it, because I'm like, how in the world does that happen? Because if you listen to any of the previous episodes, everything I talk about is actually based on relationships. And so how we relate to things actually determines exactly how we experience things. I'll give you a prime example. So I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine, and we were talking about the weather. And so in their world, they like super hot weather. But in my world, I actually prefer cooler weather. So right now, here in Northern Virginia, it's still sweater weather, y'all. It's the end of May, but it's still sweater weather. I love it because there's nothing like the crisp morning air. Like to me, the bugs have come back, but they're like not fully alive yet because they woke up like, oh my God, it's time to wake up. Oh my God, we're going to die. So it's one of those moments. So I enjoy that type of weather. I enjoy going out and maybe light sweatshirt, not a light sweatshirt. So I'm more of a sprawl guy. I think summer's a waste of time that we were just programmed to enjoy because that was the only time we got out of school. But in reality, unless it's summer at the beach, everything else is useless because you're just sitting there sweating, getting back knee sweat, yada, yada, yada. Whereas the other friend loves the warmth, loves the heat. I couldn't think of anything better in life. So let's look at that for a second. When we slow down and we look at that, two people, same conversation, completely unique experiences because we have different relationships with this thing called the weather. Now, let's look at that in life. Most of the time, your suffering is caused by the relationship you have with an item. Really simple equation. If something exceeds your expectations, you're happy. If something is less than your expectations, you're pissed off. What's the variable in the equation? You. The expectations you have for different items will determine exactly your experience of those items. Now, let's look at it from the normal nature of what we refer to as success, which is money. So there's this misconception that when I have more money, it'll solve all my problems. And while that's partially true, it's actually not really a reality. Because let's look at it. If you were used to driving with anxiety and being concerned, and to me, anxiety is the definition of that is excessive worry. So if you are an excessive worrier and that was the muscle that you developed for years, I'm sorry to tell you, but nothing outside yourself is going to be better than what you believe inside of yourself. Because it flees. It doesn't stay. You can get a big check. And then that lens of anxiety will switch it on you. Because you get the big check and you're like, man, everything's going to be cupcakes and rainbows. You're going to feel real good. You're going to feel real happy about it. And then guess what ends up happening? All of a sudden, it's going to switch from getting it to not losing it. And you're going to go and be like, oh my God, I want to make sure I don't make any mistakes because I don't want to lose it. I never want to go back to where I was before. And so all of a sudden, all you're doing is driving while staring in the rearview mirror the entire time. Like you're playing scared. That's all relationships. It's based upon how you relate to the situation. So now let's look at peace. Peace in that same scenario will go, okay, hey, I've made it. I can probably make it again. And then that's it. And then you just go right back to focusing on doing the thing you enjoy doing the thing that you need to be doing. Because enjoyment is just a decision. Like, I can enjoy a situation or I cannot. It depends on the relationship I have with that item. So when we execute from a space of peace, my definition of peace is having authentic relationships with things as they are, not as I want them to be. So we can go ahead and look at it. I used to have this misconception when it came to marriage, right? We hear the adage of happy wife, happy life kind of things that go there. And I go, well, if only one person is really happy in the relationship, how does that math? That made no sense to me. So my entire responsibility is to make sure my spouse is happy and never once consider my own happiness? Or I'm going to tie my happiness based upon the feelings of another individual? That's the only way I'm ever going to be happy? Does anybody sit back and think about these things? That don't make any damn sense. Versus, hey, I'm going to show up daily and just bring the best that I got for that day. Some days it's 25%. Other days it's 100%. There are different variants of life that will determine what's going on. Sometimes you're injured. Sometimes you're sick. Sometimes you're frustrated. Sometimes you're overwhelmed. But I will have a healthy relationship with our relationship. I will show up and I will be kind more days than I will not be. It's a totally different lens of looking at things. Then you get to see your spouse for who they are in that moment, not who they used to be, what you want them to be, or any of these other desires, like who they actually are. And you get to see them in those moments. You see them for who they are. It's just like if somebody were to go ahead and ask you questions. Hey, how do they show up? How are they doing things? If they're not the most organized person, do not hold an expectation that magically one day they're just going to show up and bury us. That better. That is the basis of being at peace. Because you can say, like, oh, cool, they're just messy. So what? You know the fact about kids? Kids are meant to be defiant. That's the whole purpose of them going out in the wild and starting to gain agency and autonomy. That's our real desire in life, is to raise kids with integrity, good character, ethics, and so they can be self-sufficient in life. I love agency. That's the skill set that I choose to give to my children. What I'm not going to hold a relationship with is expecting kids to be compliant. Because believe it or not, if you just watch animals, just in general, like kids and things, and think about yourself when you were a kid, you're actually wired to be defiant because you have to begin to develop your own sense of agency versus the narrative that we hear on Instagram of like, oh, look at me and my perfect kids, and here's what we're doing, and we're taking pictures. I will tell you, I learned one thing growing up. Really strict parents train really good liars because they have to think about all the different ways they can get away with it because the kid's desire is to have agency. At some moment or time, they go in different phases. Now, what in the world does all that have to do with being able to escape the 9-to-5? Right? That's the focus of this podcast. The focus of this and the actual desire is you have to be real with yourself. There's this illusion called retirement or building a business or escaping. The real reality is you don't really want to escape. What you want is time autonomy, time freedom, right? That's really what it is. But if you're still driving with anxiety and you have an inverse relationship with your current job, it's going to take you much longer because you have to have an audit, the real relationship with things that are going on. Because I'm here to tell you, entrepreneurship is not easier. Entrepreneurship doesn't have less stress. Entrepreneurship also at the same time, it has even more stress. And you have even angrier bosses. Those bosses end up becoming your clients. Even if you're an investor and you invested extremely well, you're still going to have downturns. You're still going to have misses. So it's not like it gets easier. The difference is you have the ability to navigate your own freedom. That's really the only difference. So you're going to trade in a 9 to 5 for a 24/8. Because once you start looking at that, whether you're buying a business, whether you're investing in real estate, you still have to play the game. Because business is a contact sport, y'all. It's kill or be killed. Not really, but you know what I'm saying. You have to have a real relationship with things for what they are, not what you want them to be. Because anybody that has gone through and has had to been first generation in anything has all kind of scars that they probably forgot about, y'all, because that's how they were wired. You've heard me speak about nature versus nurture. Your nature needs to be your nature. If you're pretty risk adverse, look at risk adverse assets, right? It'll take a little bit longer, but what feels better is progress. That's why I tell you, on average, you're going to zoom out 3 years. You got to figure out where you want to be, because the shade you sit in was the seed somebody planted many years ago. So if you want to sit in the shade in a couple years, you better start planting them damn seeds now. And the best part that happens is when you see things for what they are. Do you know how grateful I am for the time I spent in the 9 to 5? Oh my God. And it's not just some fake toxic positivity. It's real. I couldn't see it at that moment, but I can see it now. I can see the structure that it gave me. I can see the organization it saw me through. I could see where my downsides were. I can see exactly why I pissed off certain bosses at different times. The only difference was I was just an alligator in the wrong swamp. That's it. But it doesn't mean I can't learn a skill set. And all of that is because I have access to peace. I can see things for what they are, not what I want them to be. Then I can have a relationship with that. And as I consistently see that, I can then share that experience with others who come into my presence. So to land the plane, the key objective when deciding exactly what it is that you choose to build and chase down is to make sure you have a proper relationship with it. If your true desire is, I only want to work a few hours a week, you got to make certain choices. And you have to evaluate and be real with yourself and say, all right, what's my standard of living? Because we all have our different standards. Once I understand my standard of living, maybe my timeline needs to be extended a couple years. It's not about time. It's about the plan. Making sure you're executing upon that plan. And recognizing that there's going to be ebbs and flows and ups and downs. But the beautiful thing is you're in the game. Take your kicks to the shin. You know what I mean? And that's what makes it so exciting. That's when you get to wake up every day and there's this invigorating feeling that you can't explain to others unless they've been there. But just know, on the greater side of anything you can experience, you're also going to experience the other side of it. So if you have great effervescence on one side, you're going to understand a different level of anger than you ever could comprehend before. And that's the beautiful dichotomy of being a human being, right? It's about the experience. It's about what we're doing. And I firmly believe, and I will tell you this to my core, it has nothing to do with the destination. It has everything to do with the journey. So embrace it, enjoy it. And as always, if you have any questions or any things you need me to further explain, feel free to hit those DMs. Most of the podcast episodes are inspired by conversations that I'm having with other people who ask me these questions. They send me DMs. This is your podcast. This is for me to share the different pieces of insights and information that I do know, so I can be here to help and serve you. So as always, my friends, stay hungry, stay humble, and stay grateful. And until the next episode, cheers.